Mr. Scary Studios. When I was 14, I had a paper route. Occasionally, I would have to deliver newspapers to people who did not subscribe to my newspaper. One evening in the summer, I went to deliver the extra newspapers, and my mom wanted to come with. My route would be just a few blocks, so we rode our bikes, and the whole trip lasted maybe 10 to 15 minutes max. This was back when people weren't too worried about locking their doors. I remember we left our garage door open, which was really dumb. When we got back, I came in the door and saw our sliding door was open, a little bit, which was not uncommon. However, our dog was barking like crazy. My mom walks down the hall and comes back with a panicked look on her face. She very seriously asks if I had been in her room. I tell her no. She tells me to go in my room and lock the door. Someone had been in the house. I lock my door and grab the phone in case I hear something. I look out my bedroom window, which faces the backyard, and see my mom looking around. She comes back in and tells me to come in her room. On the floor, all of my dad's guns were laid out on the floor. They were usually in gun cases, but they were all out of the cases and laying in a row. He had about 5 guns. The guns were always hidden in the back of his closet. We were scared. My mom called my dad to come home from work, but I don't know why she didn't call the cops. My dad looked around and of course found nobody, and nothing was taken. My mom's purse was out on the kitchen table, and that had not been taken. My dad had not told anyone about his guns being hidden in the closet. How did someone know we had left? We had one creepy neighbor next door, which we didn't really suspect at the time. I am just glad we did not walk in before they left. There must have been more than one person because my mom's room was in the back of the house. A second person must have been looking out the window and saw us coming, daytime. That was many years ago, and we still talk about how scary that was. A couple of years ago, I was living in a small 2-bedroom apartment with just my small chihuahua and myself. For perspective, I was a 22-year-old female. Also, the apartment that I lived in was more like a large house that was separated into 3 sections. I only had one other neighbor living at these units, and he lived to my left. All the other units were vacant. I had never felt unsafe living there until this incident. I left for work during the week around 7:30 a.m. and wouldn't return home until after 5 p.m. I had a definite delay routine. While I was at work, I would leave my dog in the living room area so she could lounge on the couch. In this area, there were large sliding glass doors that led to the backyard. When I would take Honey, my dog, out to the potty, there was a large red fence that wrapped around my yard and separated it from my neighbor's yards on my left, right, and behind, besides my one fellow renter. There were a few houses that were occupied behind me. All of the people who lived around me seemed normal and never made a lot of noise or caused any issues. So one day I went to work as usual. After work I decided to go visit my friend for a little while. When I was there, I had this feeling that I should wait before going home. So I stayed a little longer than I had originally planned. When I got home, it was around 9 p.m. I opened my door and called to Honey as I normally do. She would always run up to me and jump around in excitement. This time, however, I noticed she was in her cage that I had kept open, and it contained her food and water bowls. I kept calling her name, but she never responded. I started feeling a sense of dread. I walked up to her cage and I immediately realized she was dead. At first I thought she had died of some sort of natural cause. Then I looked up and realized the door to the second bedroom was wide open. I always keep it closed and knew I hadn't opened it before work. It was at that moment I knew someone had been in my house. My blood ran cold and I ran outside and stood there in shock for a minute. Wanting to hear a familiar voice, I called my dad, who was luckily in town right then and advised me to call the cops. A cop arrived at the apartment and immediately began saying that the dog probably died of natural cause. However, I showed her where the back gate was wide open, and several other clues. Someone else had been there. She still didn't believe me and wouldn't do anything else until we did an autopsy on Honey to show that she had been killed. Fast forward a week later, and we get the autopsy results back. She had died of blunt force trauma to the head, and whoever did it to her had placed her in the cage and covered her up to make her look like she had been sleeping. Our best guess is that the person killed her because she wouldn't stop barking. When a detective was sent to the apartment, he asked around to all of my neighbors, and no one had seen or heard anything. Also, the guy who lives beside me didn't have anyone break into his apartment, so I feel like whoever did this was looking for me. It has been 2 years since this incident, and the culprit was never caught. So apartment creeper and dog killer, let's not meet. Hello, my name is Henry, and I'm a baker. Primarily, I bake cakes for this company, which usually means working late to finish an order someone placed. Luckily, they allow me to continue my work at home if it gets too late, only if I finish with absolute perfection. Now, I stopped working at home, or really entering my house for that matter. Since that thing was entered, it happened last Thursday night, a normal regular night for me. I was at home baking as usual when my dog, sleeping in a chair, got up and stared at the dark entrance room of my house. Not moving a muscle, suddenly he started barking loudly, almost as if he was panicking. I was trying to focus on my work while he was barking. I decided to give him a treat to shut him up. I tossed it to him, but he was still fixated at the dark room. Annoyed, I threw the treat into the room and continued working. That got him quiet. He took a few steps into the darkness, then sprinted back without the treat. Even after that, he still stared at the room, but quietly this time. I finally was able to put the cake into the oven and relax. I turned on the TV and just sat there. About 10 minutes later, I get up to check on the cake. As I get up, I see the dog treat is back. Finally maned up, didn't you, boy? I said, after checking the cake. I walked back to sit down, I looked at my dog. It finally hit me. During this whole time, he never moved. So how was the treat back? Then it came from the dark. Don't forget to subscribe. Thanks for watching.